Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 11:20. Court Chaser. The dark blue, boundless sea that ebbed gently and seemed to contain infinite life was presented to members of the City of Silver's expedition team. It was no longer a record written down in ancient books, nor was it a combination of words spoken by outsiders. Although it was still very far away, it seemed like contact was possible. The wine-red-haired Iona watched in a daze. She opened her mouth, as though she wanted to say something, but in the end, all she said was the words, "The sea." Just as she finished speaking, a silver crack suddenly appeared on her forehead. The crack shot up rapidly, instantly splitting Iona into two halves. Warm and bright red blood gushed out, splashing across Derek's face. Without a sound, more silvery white light shot out from her body, splitting her body into countless small pieces of flesh. The reveling face full of hope was like a puzzle that had fallen to the ground, splattering everywhere. It was only at this moment that Demon Hunter Colin reacted. He brandished his two swords and slashed them diagonally outwards, as though he was dealing with invisible enemies. Clang! 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 Silver light flashed, and the sound of metal reverberating echoed. The light of dawn around Colin Iliad shattered and scattered in chaos. At this moment, the silver phantom behind Shepherd Lovia had already taken a step forward and stabbed the blurry giant's sword into the ground. Clang! 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 As they surrounded the people of the City of Silver, the streaks of silver light appeared in different spots, trying their best to cut through the invisible barrier around them like insects struggling in amber. Clang! 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 The dense, sometimes thick silver light constantly appeared, causing the defensive powers of the expedition team to tremble, as though it would shatter at any moment. However, be it Demon Hunter Colin, Shepherd Lovia, or Derek, they couldn't find any traces of the enemy. The fool above the gray fog was just about to give a certain reminder when the chief of the six-member council seemed to realize something and crossed his two swords in front of him. Clang! The gigantic silver beam struck the two swords, causing Demon Hunter Colin's feet to sink into a solid stone slab. He took this opportunity and roared, "Unshadowed domain!" Upon hearing the chief's reminder, Derek didn't hesitate and stabbed his finger on the thorns of the unshadowed crucifix, doing so without any regard for the pain. As his blood oozed out, clear, bright, pure, and blazing light suddenly exploded, enveloping the entire area between the two buildings. There wasn't a single shadow in this area that could hide. Nothing else could be hidden. Light had become the ruler of this region. A huge figure quickly outlined itself on the side of the giant king's palace. It was wearing silver full-body armor and was nearly 5 meters tall. The flickering light behind the mask was either deep red or orange. And unmistakably, there was a single vertical eye there. This was a giant who was still alive. He didn't wait for the enemy to enter a certain range before attempting to attack, implying that he had sufficient intelligence. Unlike the other silver-armored knights, the giant's bracer had bright patterns on it. On the right was a blood-red color that circled around his arm, and at the same spot on the left, it was adorned with black spots. The giant knight raised his broadsword and pointed at everyone in the City of Silver. He said in a thunderous voice, "How dare you barge into the king's court and disturb Lord Sasser's slumber?" Sasser? Dark Angel Sasser? The fool Klein above the gray fog was alarmed when he heard that. He subconsciously sat up straight. The former left hand of God, the deputy of the divine kingdom, the leader of the kings of angels, one of the two leaders of Rose Redemption, hadn't disappeared into the river of history. He was sleeping deep in the giant king's court, sleeping in the residence of the giant king? Why did he choose to enter a state of slumber? Many thoughts flashed through Klein's mind as he subconsciously cast his gaze towards the palace that the giant knight was guarding. It was the tallest and most magnificent building in the giant king's court. The dusk's light seemed to transform into something corporeal that covered its surface, dyeing it with a clear sense of decline. It gave off the feeling that the sun had set and an eternal eventide was coming. On one side were steeples, while on the other side were spires. The front door was a double door that opened outwards, with gray and blue as the main colors. Its height exceeded 10 meters, and it was covered with symbols, labels, and patterns. It looked stately and mysterious. There was a pitch-black socket on the left side of the door at a height of 3 to 4 meters tall. It was equivalent to an adult's fist. Upon seeing this scene, Klein suddenly thought of the dream divination he had done in the past. Back then, he had seen the same scene, and the medium he had used for the divination was the giant's key he had obtained from Vice Admiral Iceberg. Is that the key to opening the Giant King's residence? As he extended his hand, he tried to use his true vision to pass through the obstruction of the building to see the situation inside the palace. Unfortunately, he failed. The iron black key, which was the size of a 7-string guitar, landed in front of him. At this moment, Demon Hunter Collins suddenly said before the giant knight attacked, "You're a court chaser?" The giant knight's broadsword didn't cleave down. Instead, he paused for a second and said in a low voice, "After all this time, to think that there's someone who can still remember court chasers. I'm the leader of all the chasers, the light color Merskogen, and I later followed Lord Sasser. I once hunted powerful dragons, elves, devils, demonic wolves, phoenixes. Today, you are honored to die under my blade." This light color didn't soften his attitude. He hunched his body slightly and held his sword with both hands. Like a flying meteor, he rushed towards the people from the City of Silver with heavy footsteps at high speeds. Due to the existence of the unshadowed domain, he could no longer hide his body like before. Just as Colin Iliad, Lovia and company determined that Merskogen's attack would arrive in a second, this giant knight suddenly stopped his silver broadsword slash midway. Demon Hunter Colin, who wasn't in Lovia's evil spirit's defensive circle, suddenly had a premonition of danger. Without any hesitation, he lunged to the side. Boom! A silver ray of light suddenly emerged from the spot where he had been standing, destroying everything from within. This attack was so strange, like it was generated by the void itself. At the same time, there was also a change in Colin Iliad, who had ducked to the ground. His clothes were torn into pieces and cloth by his rapidly expanding muscles. In just a blink of an eye, this demon hunter had turned into a grayish-blue giant with bluish-black lines warped around him. At his forehead was a deep black crack. Every inch of him contained immense power, infinite mystery, and a strange psyche influence. If a Beyonder under sequence foresaw this scene, they would definitely suffer from a strong backlash. Their brains might suffer an excruciating pain that would cause them to lose their minds. Even their spirituality would be corrupted. And if they couldn't withstand such an influence, going crazy, losing control, or even sudden death were certain outcomes. This was the incomplete mythical creature form of a demigod. Originally, Colin Iliad didn't dare to release this form due to the influence of the Twilight in the Giant King's court. But now, he realized that in the unshadowed domain, the feeling of decline had weakened significantly. He then raised the two swords that had enlarged in size as well. With them covered in the light of dawn, he fought fiercely with the light color Merskogen in the domain that was enveloped in light, without any shadows. Clang! 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 The three swords of the giants clashed and separated from time to time. Although Colin Iliad was at a disadvantage, he still managed to withstand the barrage of attacks from the King's Court Chasers' leader. From time to time, he would feel a strong sense of danger. Then, without any warning, he would either duck or roll in another direction. And at this moment, silver beams of light would always appear from the inside to the outside. Derek had already closed his eyes. Ignoring the loss of blood, he tried his best to maintain the unshadowed domain. Hyam and another Dawn Paladin similarly didn't dare open their eyes. They helped shepherd Elder Lovia and slowly moved the group towards the palace without exiting the protective domain. If not for the help of the silver-armored knight evil spirit, they would have long been diced into small pieces of flesh and blood by the storm of light that swept the area. That light color Merskogen alone had placed the City of Silver's expedition team into a precarious position, with no chance of counterattacking. As expected of the leader of the King's Court Chasers, this should be the strongest force beneath subsidiary gods, or in other words, angels. Compared to the Demon Hunter, the Silver Knight has several more terrifying Beyonder powers. Above the gray fog, the fool Klein held the sea god's scepter and carefully observed the battle. He quickly figured out the aspect in which light color Murskogen was powerful in. Firstly, his defensive power can be transformed into a full-body silver armor set. Secondly, he can hide and conceal himself with the light, hiding any malicious intent. Thirdly, the condensed Sword of Dawn can now be maintained for longer periods of time. It can be used as a normal weapon, sufficiently sharp and good at cleansing. Fourth, it can create some sort of thin silver-white sword. It has the ability to teleport, and it can bypass most barriers to attack the target directly, and even cause it to erupt from within the target's body. Furthermore, this thin silver-white sword condensed without any warning, making it difficult to predict. This is a saint who's extremely good at fighting head-on. If it wasn't for the rich experience and strong intuition of the City of Silver's chief, he would have been in danger due to the suppression effect from being of the same pathway when fighting in his mythical creature form. If it were me, I might have already been killed. Of course, I wouldn't fight head-on with the leader of the King's Court Chasers. From the current situation, because the evil spirit needs to protect its shepherd, there's no way for it to directly participate in the battle. The City of Silver's expedition team has almost no chance of winning. Yes, they're already slowly retreating. Very rational. If it really doesn't work, perhaps Mr. Fool will have to deliver lightning punishment. However, the true creator should still be watching. My lightning storm might not be able to quickly resolve Murskogen. Klein's thoughts raced when he suddenly thought of a problem. How did light color Murskogen, who wasn't an angel, survive since the end of the second epoch? He's neither a demoness, vampire, nor undying. And from him possessing reason, as well as the ability he displays in battle, he doesn't have Beyonder characteristics of other pathways mixed in him.